Okay, this will be interesting today. We're gonna start today. We're gonna try out some Firebase Studio again. We're gonna try to do the learning activity for this. We're also gonna try to prep for the code review. I posted more details about how we're gonna do code reviews and project presentations. Much of the project presentation will be a code review, and we'll do that next Tuesday. And if you're in class, we'll do it in class. If you're not in class, we'll assign you an asynchronous partner you'll have to work with and do it there. So we will try to partner people up. We're going to do this in a little while once we get going. Maybe some more students will show up. So we want to make sure we get everyone assigned to a team here. So, I mean, a partner. So we'll talk about that later on in the class. So we're just going to start with this, our learning activity. Oops, I want to move these in the wrong order. I'm going to move this. Okay, the learning activity where we're just going to try, again, to use Firebase Studio to create an app for that has Firebase authentication and storing data in Firestore here. So I'm going to do a new app and walk through that again. But if you got one working on Tuesday, or you've got to start on one, you want to keep working on that, feel free to keep working on that. We're going to talk about some processes for that. I'm going to get it started here, and then I'm going to jump back into this learning resources. I've added some more to the Firebase Studio learning resources, talking about how to work through bugs here, and then how to integrate some suggestions for how to integrate Firebase Studio here. I was hoping to have a process in place where I could say, if you always do this, integration with Firebase will always work. I've not been able to find it. It is amazingly, one of the problems is that generative AI is kind of stochastic. It's somewhat random there. And so sometimes something works and sometimes it doesn't work there with this AI system. So I've been able, so I have a list of things you can try, and I've been both succeeded and failed on all of these here. So I'm going to go to Firebase Studio. I'm going to start a new project. So I was just thinking, and I was looking at, I was just at Animal Allies with the student yesterday, and we were helping them set up a new laptop. And I often get requests from nonprofits for help, and I often get requests from like students who want to need an internship or a project to work on. And I always wanted to be able to coordinate that better. So I just thought, well, I'll just start thinking about that as a project, as a sample app, because I did get my Hallmark ornament stuff, heirloom ornaments, working pretty well after some work on that. So, and I have actually two different versions of that. So I don't necessarily want to do that again. So I'm going to start a new app, new prompt here. I want an app that non-profits can use to list IT projects they need help with. Then volunteers can select certain projects they want to work on. This is kind of like Fiverr. But for computer volunteers. So I need let's do able to list projects that need help and also select. So again, the soul works as we give it some general description initially. Oh, I should have clicked on the help AI help there. So and again, you can have AI help with that, and then we get this blueprint here that describes this. So we have a project list, we have volunteer profiles, we have project search and filtering here, AI powered skill matches. So one of the things that Gemini often does is they want to start using AI in their projects. They're selling AI services there, so they often want to do that. So I initially I almost always take those out. So can you remove the, and I don't want to do the search and filter first. I can always add that search and filter along with the AI our skills match. Okay. Also, I don't want an approval process right away. We don't want an approval process. Just allow volunteers to select projects they want to be assigned to. We do want to allow multiple users to be assigned to each project. Just like in database work, it is kind of important here now to watch your, like, is this a one-to-one connection or a many-to-many connection? So if I have projects and I have volunteers, because that'll kind of dictate the database. And it's a little more, I mean, some of this stuff is easier to add later on, but changing the underlying data structure is a little more complicated. So I like to try to get that set up right away here. So here. So yeah. So let's say we have some colors. Okay. So we're going to prototype this app. Okay. A couple things on Firebase here. I've had real mixed results, and it has improved. So, like yesterday in class, or no, Tuesday in class, I tried it, didn't work very well to do this, but they have tools now to integrate Firebase, and they can do a lot of that. Last night I tried it again, and it worked much more smoothly for this. So I don't know if they improved things or if it just, again, I see a lot of mixed results here when I tried at different times and places right now. So some things you can do. One is you can list the Firebase tools on the initial blueprint. I did not do that this time. Or again, you can add Firebase to the project. My experience is that it often, even if you list it, it often doesn't do it the first time anyway. You've got to go back and tell it where, it'll do a prototype without the database backend, but just do a front end prototype initially. So I generally ask it to add Firebase afterwards, but I've tried both and I've got it to work. Again, the one time it worked, it didn't really do it right away, but it was put it in the blueprint. And then when I asked it, is this working? It's, oh no, but it knew the details of being able to do that. As far as Firebase projects, again, in Firebase console, we have these different projects here, and they're tied to different apps. here, and you can have multiple apps use the same project if you want here for things. So I can look at a project here, and we can have an app, and then you also have certain things configured here. So you can have it create a new Firebase project. That works sometimes well. Sometimes it doesn't work well for me. And you can have it use an existing Firebase project. I've had success with it using a Firebase project, existing one, but I've also had it fail when trying to use an existing Firebase project out there. So I've had both. Online, the community often says it's better to create an existing Firebase project and use that. But I think that recommendation might be, a month old, something from like 6 months ago until a month ago. I think in the last month that it's able to create new Firebase projects better, certainly in the last week. So we'll look at this. And again, within these projects, sometimes you have to enable certain tools. Here, does it have authentication enabled? And there are different sign-in methods, which generally the easiest one to get configured is email and password. So that's what I'm just starting with. Then you can see if you can add Google and stuff like that. And again, does Firebase Studio able to do that, or do you have to go in and do this? Same with Firestore. Do you add Firestore here? And has it enabled Firestore? And it has it set up the rules here so that, like here's the debugging or development rules, anyone can update the database in this amount, within the first month or something like that. So has it set up the rules for this? The last thing is that there's usually configuration files that I'm going to see how this is doing. Oh, did this all good. Okay, okay, the last thing is this configuration file. Usually let's go back to the overview. You register apps, and each app has a project ID, a number, and some specifications. And again, depending on what your configuration, there's these settings that have to be copied over there. And again, we're using NPM. We're using Node. So this is the Node. I don't remember a Node project manager. What does that? I don't remember exactly what the PM stands for NPM, but this is Node library stuff in JavaScript. So under that, it will need these configuration files somewhere in the code over here. And so it used to be you had to manually do that. Now it's getting better at grabbing those itself. Okay, so let's grab this. I'm going to ask it, try to get Firebase. I'm going to start with user authentication first. So we have a profile here. I'm going to ask, are we using Firebase authentication for users sign in and sign out? I would like to use Firebase for this. If needed, can you create a new Firebase project for this app? Okay, so this is the tool. It's setting up Firebase, and it wants you to click Start here, and it will generate stuff in the Firebase console. So we should see it over here. So I'm going to say Start. And so it should be creating a Firebase project and then setting up, again, it's already setting up Firebase authentication and Firestore. I didn't ask it to set up Firestore, but it knows it should. So it is supposedly going to set up both of those, and we'll see how this works. Just note this is all web-based, and next week we're going to be looking at some other frameworks. Well, actually, not next week, the week after Thanksgiving. So just so you know, you're free to try out another framework even this week if you want. So here, when you're creating a new project, here, there are these different frameworks that are available. And again, I would suggest using a framework you're already familiar with here. So like Flutter is a good example, Python, Java, something like that. So if you want to create one of those, I would. So because Flutter is something we're covering, and we will do this later. And again, you've got a project doing maybe if you want, you could see, can you recreate the project you're working on with AI entirely, and how well will that do, and compare that. So you're free to try that out as this learning project. I won't be offended here. So again, we're creating a new template, Flutter, give it some app and do that. I'm just doing it the most simple way is a JavaScript or TypeScript website, because that's how it was originally set up. Oh, that's an interesting error. Okay. It created a new Firebase project here. So if I look over here, I should see the project here. And again, you'll watch, it should be tied to your app here, and it should match the name, the number there. So it created a new Firebase project, but setting up services, it ran into this error. Now it's trying to troubleshoot that error. We'll see if it works out okay. So again, it should be enabling Firebase authentication and stuff. And it doesn't, we'll go in there and maybe manually enable it for it. Okay. Yeah. So, okay, it's going to try to create, I think, another Firebase project. So we'll see how that works. F99B7, F99B7. No, that is using the same Firebase project, so that's good. So I'm just doing that. Okay, it seems to have been happier now. And now it's going to then do some coding, recode the layout. So the login, the sign in, sign out scripts all use Firebase for this stuff. I would like to just step through what I found as my steps for when I get into an error. So again, a lot of times it'll find an error and it'll be able to fix it, or when you're running it, you'll run into an error. Sometimes it won't notice the error, sometimes it will. So if it doesn't notice the error, I'll just copy the error message and post it in down here and say, can you fix this error? And sometimes it doesn't know the context of the files even that well. So sometimes I tell it what the file names to look at or stuff like that there. So again, once you've worked on error, so some ways to debug it. And I find this very much working with AI like working with another developer, like often like a junior developer or even like a student. The first thing I do is we reload things. That's the, reload the page, reload the app. Sometimes I step out of this project and then back into the whole project and reload everything there. So, step 0 is always reload. So even if it's getting some compile error, it might have cached something or things like that. There might think it's logged in, it's not. So reloading often, even with syntax error, sometimes helps, it seems like. Then, again, the first thing you do with, like, if you're trying to help out another developer is you say, can you explain this problem? There, you ask the AI to explain the problem, so it will walk through what is the problem, what codes are, and it creates a context then. In the same way where if you're asking if someone else asks you for help, the first thing you say, tell me about it, and they will explain the context. And often that having them go through that explanation will allow them to see the error. it's at least half the time I'm working with students and I ask them to explain the problem as if as they're walking through the problem and explaining it to me, it occurs to them where the error is and what they should try to do next. And AI works similarly there. So ask him to explain the error. Check also to make sure the error isn't outside the scope of the AI, like it used to be in here. This could not modify some things in Firebase Console. It couldn't download the settings file. And so I had, if it's an error, it kept, I ran into a problem here where it kept trying to get the settings file and doing it. It could not do it. And so finally, I just had to go do that for this. I'm just going to let that run for a little bit. Okay, so the next step is to try to provide fuller context. Generally, I switch into code view here, so I have more. I can see the files that are here, and then I ask it. I might give it more of the log. It can often not see the log. So where do we see logs? Let me switch here to console or to code mode here. So I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember. Right now, I'm not looking. There's usually a terminal window, and maybe I am thinking something else. But again, you can do printout statements and stuff of this down here for this. Also in Chrome, I often bring up the developer tool. So go on to ... more tools, developer tools, and that'll open up this developer tools, and there's a console window over here, and you'll see errors reported. And these are usually errors that the Firebase Studio cannot get. So I'm often highlighting these errors or copying these errors and pasting them into Firebase Studio for that. So providing more context. Also, if it sometimes just doesn't know about all the files, I don't know how big its context is. It's getting better, but again, I often will point it to certain files and say, remember this file. And sometimes it works just by giving its name here. You can also attach these files. In here, I can usually just remind it of the name or at least the path to the files there. And that will help because it can look up the path. Sometimes, again, going back to the first thing, asking it to explain what files might be involved, it will list out all the files, and that will help with the context. Finally, like I often tell students here, add more print statements or log statements or stuff like that. Ask it to instrument or print out, add more debug statements or print statements to the files where the problem is to help us isolate it. And then once it does, then you'll see stuff printed out here, the console, or printed out somewhere here for this. So see where you can see those errors. Sometimes it's useful even to add a little display, a status text view or area here where on the web page it can display some of the error message for that. So again, this is more of a full stack stuff. I mean, when we're debugging full stack web issues like this, you also want to make sure you're figuring out which code is running on the server and which code is running on the client, and is there the problem on the client or the server. That's why it's helpful to see the console here. This output will be all client stuff there. And then you can print statements are off and running on the server. So here's our web console down here. Yeah, that's where it was. And so this is often running on the server and this is often running on the client. So that sometimes will help if you tell it where you're getting some of this information from here. So again, adding more logs, debugging. even with this, sometimes it gets into a loop where it will not solve the problem. So sometimes I just switch to a better AI. I don't know what AI is using now here. And again, I thought it used to be easier to configure what AI it was using here. And now I'm not seeing it so much. Maybe I'm missing it somewhere here. Um, but sometimes I have access to, you might have access to an AI that you like, if you like for coding, maybe Claude. Uh, the new Gemini 3 is out in some places. I've been using Chat GPT 5.1 a lot lately. So I find sometimes, and even if it's not a better model, just a different model sometimes helps. And I will paste the information, a bunch of files there. Often will dump a bunch of stuff. Sometimes, now it's harder here. If we push this to a GitHub repo, sometimes I push it to GitHub and then ask the AI to look at that GitHub repo. Sometimes I'll just download from GitHub provided the whole zip file and give the whole zip file to AI. Sometimes I'll just give it certain files so you can decide, oh, here, in a perfect world, we're working in IDE and then the AI can see that all the files directly. But again, sometimes as a last resort, I'm switching to some other option to try to get some other ideas. And then I'll often take what it says and paste it back into the AI here and say, how about this? And then I'll paste whatever is recommended by the other AI and let the AI, I sometimes feel like I'm just conversationalist between two AI models here. And the last thing is, you can always just debug it yourself. You have excellent debugging skills that you've learned and honed through years, hours of classes like this. So you can often, and you will surprise yourself if you actually spend some time. You often see things in this, see messages in there that AI is missing. AI is really smart, but it still misses some obvious points. So do that. Okay, how'd we do here with our prototype? Okay, I've set up Firebase core integration for authentication. You can now sign in. So again, whenever I do this, I like to reload the page here and sign in for this. So right now it's showing the page without when I'm even not signed in. So I might want to look at that here, but I will sign in here. It's not working. It's doing sign in with Google. It'll be interesting to see if that works. So I'm going to go into the Firebase project here and just look and see what it's set up as. So again, we have one app set up. I don't see Firebase authentication set up for this in my project overviews. So I'm going to look at authentication and see if it is. So it doesn't look like it is initialized Firebase authentication on this project. So it has this tool. So it's basically created the front end to do authentication, but it hasn't done that. So I'm going to ask it, can you check if you have enabled Firebase authentication in the Firebase project? I want to use, since it already has Google sign in, I'll let it do that both. Email, password, and Google sign in. No, Google sign-in is complicated. You require certain security stuff be set up to use Google sign-in. So I usually, with initial projects, don't do that, but it had done the interface already. So I'm kind of interested to see if it will do that. So again, I'm looking at what it's changing. It's just changing the local pages here. And so that'll add this, but again, I don't see it modifying anything related to Firebase here. So over here, it will have, like here, it has a Firebase file, and it'll have a configuration file here. And so it has the project configuration. So that should map, if I go back here, it has grabbed that correctly. If I look at my yeah, the app here. Oops, sorry. Got somehow confused. I'm gonna go back and see all my projects and then go back to this project. So here it should see the application. See if I click on that, I should be able to configure it. And again, it should see these files. So here's my API key for this project. Here's my project ID. It ends in C855. And again, it has the application ID C855. So it is configured properly there. Oops. For this. But again, I don't think it's enabled authentication yet. So we'll see what it does with that. What's your experience so far with Firebase here, getting it to work? And how do you say you're not getting it to work? Now, Nick, you said you got to work last time. Did you get Firebase? Oh, yeah, that's who did, right? So, okay.
I got my work.
Okay.
It just worked.
It just worked. Yeah. Again, sometimes, again, like last night, I said, I'm just gonna go, figure out these errors and try some different things, and I figure out, and it just worked. I mean, I did this just what I'm doing today. It just worked there. So, I can say there's a little stochasticity here where I get, again, sometimes if it doesn't work, I think it's worthwhile to ask it to try again and see if it'll work for this. Okay, so now it's supposed to be saying that this is all working. And I see some JSON files here that might be working, but it didn't ask me to set up anything. And if I go into Firebase here and look at this, look at authentication, it is still not enabled here at all. So I still don't think it's working here. So, but let's try to sign in. At least it should let me sign in with email and password. I mean, yeah, now, which I think is a simpler sign in. Okay, so here's my email password, sign in. So again, I don't have a sign in, so I'm going to sign up first. So I'm going to click on sign up, do that, and sign up. Now it will try to create a login. And again, so now it's having this issue here. And so again, now when I clicked on this issue, it saw it and said, do you want me to fix this error? Sometimes I've had to paste this error in it and say, fix this error. So I'm going to have it fix this error. And again, I don't think it is enabled authentication, but I don't think it's going to figure that out. So I can try to ask it, or I can just figure it out. So again, it's getting this, oh, Firebase, it's trying to do a new Firebase setup. So I think that's good. We'll see if it will set up the services correctly here. I'm going to go back to the Firebase process here. The one thing I've been wondering is if I have this open in Firebase Console, is that causing any problems? But I don't think it is. It has worked when I've had these projects open in Firebase Console. So, but again, sometimes it just hangs there. So I'm just going to go back to this, all the Firebase projects, and then see if that. So again, this is where I think it should be working on setting up the Firebase. Okay, I'm going to pause. We'll let this work and we'll see if I can come here. Okay, so again, it let me sign up now. I'm going to Firebase Console, going to authentication, and it added my user with my username and password here, and it has a user ID. So it is looking like it is working. It has me logged in there. So now I can try to log out here and hit sign in again. And now rather than sign up, I'll just do sign in. It should sign me in with that username and password here. Yeah, that looks like that's working. And again, you can try another username and password. Right now, we don't do much with recovery stuff, so you can just make up usernames and passwords and add new users to this and stuff. Okay. Next, I'm going to ask it, is it creating are the list of projects stored in Firestore? Because if I go look at Firestore over here, I don't even see it listed as an option yet. So I'm going to ask it, are the list of projects stored locally or in Firestore? I want these stored in a Firestore collection. I'm also going to remind it, remember, I want to track the user who created a project and also allow multiple users to be assigned to a project. Okay, we'll let that run. It should have permissions to do that. Okay, so again, you might have to ask it to do Firestore there. Now, if you did that, so again, if I'm going here, it should have set up Firestore. It's didn't here. So I'm going to put Firestore here. And it should have it, and then it should have rules. So if it's rules are, if it's saying it might not have it, so here it's requesting authentication here. So it shouldn't be this way. Yeah, this is a big, I mean, so I want to do development test here. No, not that one. So I'm going to ask it, well, I'm going to just say fix this error and see if that'll do it. You might, if it's complaining about authentication, you might ask it to tell it to go in and change the Firestore rules for development or and open the database while we're developing or something like that, or while we're debugging it so that anyone, to get that. And you can also look back at other Firebase projects you may have made and what their rules were set up as. So if I look at this one, and go to Firestore and go to rules. It just allows anyone, so I can actually just copy this. Now, version rule, so you have to worry about the rule versions here, and how this, I'm just gonna copy this all and see. But you might, again, I've had pretty good luck with just asking it to, update it. So, so again, it spends a lot of time redoing the code, which I don't like, because the error is actually, my error, I think, is in with this Firebase instance. The I don't think it has it set up yet. So if I go here, Firebase database, okay, it's got it set up, rules. So again, we're still not set up. I guess I gave it all those rules about who can volunteer and stuff, and I think it tried to implement all of those rules here, and I don't think it did them correctly. So here's an example where I have this issue and it is not seeing that issue. So again, I will tend to just copy this issue and say, like, help me with this error. And again, sometimes at this point, I will bring up the Firebase, the console too, and see what's being shown there. So here are these errors. So I'm just going to grab some of them. Here are some errors from the developer console. So, and paste those errors in there too. Okay, so now I'm going to watch, and often it might miss things like I don't see a way to add projects or delete projects, just list projects. So I'm going to add that functionality in here. Sometimes it's missing that. Can you add the, or I need the ability, the user needs to be able to add or create projects from the projects page and also the dashboard. And I still don't see any data. It's still not storing any data in here. But it also isn't displaying any data, any projects. So that I think initially it'll have some fake projects or fake data in there. So I often think it's good when it's not showing any data because that means it is seeming to pulling from Firebase. So it is not seeing any projects from Firebase because there aren't any there, but it's also I don't have a way of adding projects. So we'll see if we can get that to work. Okay, here's my create project. This project one. My org one. Fix my printer. More details here. Printer fixing. Okay. It's requiring lots of stuff. So I want to probably want it to not require these fields. So can you remove the most of the length requirements from a new project? Also only the project title should be required. Project 2 org. It's the printer. Okay, it says it created a project. Now we'll go over here, refresh in Firebase. For that, it has a projects collection now. Here's the project, and here's the information about that project. Here, that looks good. It is often putting images in here. I'm never quite sure where it's getting them, so but that's fine for now. And the nonprofit ID, I think this is the user ID of the person who created this project, I think. And they have a list of other volunteers IDs who are volunteering on the project. So that looks like it's good for this. So, okay. I'm going to close this. I'm going to just show you how to push this to GitHub also. So if we go here, switch to code mode here, let it load up for this. On the left-hand side here, there'll be a source control panel for this. Open up a page so we can see it. Okay, so here's our web page running. Here's Gemini running over here. So source control is over here. So I'm going to try to publish it to source control right away. So I need a message. Basic working with Firestore. Hit publish. It's going to try to sign into GitHub. So here's your code. So copy that code and then continue. GitHub will sign in, paste the code in there, continue. It's gonna do this. I have two-factor authentication enabled with my GitHub here. So I have to do my numbers. 162-812. All right. So it should be good. Should be able to close that. And so now it'll say publish to GitHub as a private or public one. I'm going to do this as public because I want to share it. If you do private, you just have to add me as a collaborator so I can see it. But I'm just going to do that and have it go. Oh, I already have one called this, so I'm going to change the name. So I'm going to make this volunteer connect Firebase Studio. Okay. Oops. And I think I just published it private. So we'll see. Okay. It asks some things like, do you want Firebase Studio periodically run fire git fetch? I'm not going to be getting this from anywhere else. I'm not going to do this. But again, if you have other people developing it, that's often helpful here to keep it up to date. So here's my project out there. And I think it is private. Well, let's see. I go to settings. It is private. So I'm going to change it to public. There. So now it is public. Okay, so that's how you can publish it. And then as you make more changes, you can just commit more of those. So the GitHub stuff seems to work pretty straightforward. I haven't run into GitHub problems yet. So, okay, I'm going to stop here. So again, this would be enough for the project, for the learning activity here. You feel free to play more with it if you want. I'm going to go back and talk about the code review and what we're doing there. So you're working on project 2 still, our Flutter project for this. You have next week to finish things up, but on Tuesday in class, students are going to do in-class code reviews. Online students have next week to do this. So there's 2 steps in this. You're going to be given a partner. You're going to review your partner's code, and your partner is going to review your code there. So it helps if you can review the code ahead of time. And a lot of code reviews at companies do this. So the first thing you're going to do is make a code review package there, a screenshot of your app, select some code that you want. So create a document. You're basically going to create a document you want to share with your partner, your code review partner. A screenshot or 2 of your app. Select some code here, a couple pages of code, 150 lines, 200 lines, something like that. That's kind of related somehow. So select some code and paste that in your document. Some context notes. What is the code supposed to do? How does it fit? Just a basic overview. And then if there are any concerns you have with this code here. A good thing, it's not bad if you generated had AI help you with some code. This might be a good place to walk through that code and make sure you understand it and the other person understands it too. Or you can, if you write your own code there, that's fine. So you're going to create this code review package first and share it with your partner. So I'd like by Sunday night, you are sharing your package with your partner. And then in class on Tuesday, we'll be doing code reviews. We're going to be using this process. Again, this is kind of a, I'm trying to make a generic code review like a lot of companies would have. So the first, you're going to get, the 2 of you will get together. The author will just spend a few minutes walking through the code. There is a chance your partner will not have read your code before the code review. So if that's needed, there'll be up to a 10-minute silent reading, where you'll spend some time reading through the code if you haven't done this, okay? But all of you will have done that already before you start the code review, so you will not have to do that, right? Yeah, you're all nodding. Good job. So, so you can do that. And then I suggest you work through some user stories through the code. You can go line by line through the code. I like it better when we walk through scenarios. So like, what happens when this happens? And you say, well, this, if I if I type in something here and click on this button, what happens? And you can kind of walk through the code and see what happens. What we would use, maybe call like a user story flow or just a walkthrough flow where you're saying when this happens or this happens. It's not uncommon, like in real world, that you would be working on a user story. And so you would follow that story and you would have some existing code and you have modified that code and you'd work through your changes to that code as you walk through it. So here. So you walk through that and then you do your checklist, readability, comments and documentation, UI design, architecture here, and you make some suggestions in some of these areas. You don't have to make suggestions in all of these areas. You just, or make some notes on it. Is this good? And then you end up with a couple action items of this. What are 2 or 3 recommendations that you make to this code there for this? So that's what you're going to want to do with this. Okay. And then you will submit. So initially you share your packet by Sunday night. You should email your packet to your fellow partner and me so I can see that you did that there. So email it to me. And then when you submit it, you will submit both your packet, your partner's packet, your code review, and your partner's code review report. So all we have to do is break ourselves into teams. So we're going to do that now. So we're going to work in teams here. I'm going to pause the video and we'll break up the people that are here into teams.